Ask any baseball fan what their favorite video game was growing up, and a majority of them will likely tell you that it was MVP Baseball 2005, developed by EA Sports. In the mid-2000s, EA had a strong record going for its sports video games. Madden, NHL, NBA Live, MVP Baseball, Tiger Woods, NASCAR, FIFA, NCAA, EA Big Street games. In essence, EA Sports was king, and then they made a decision that would change the sports gaming landscape forever. In January 2005, EA Sports and the NFL would sign an exclusive license, giving EA the sole rights to the NFL, its branding, teams, players, and so forth. Take-Two Interactive, who owned the 2K brand, would call the move a tremendous disservice to the fans. What followed was a reactionary countermove by 2K. Since they could no longer make NFL games, their focus had to shift to other sports. As such, they signed an exclusive deal with MLB, which would deprive EA of their MVP Baseball series having any MLB-related licensing. Which is kind of ironic given 2K's reaction to EA Sports taking Madden exclusive, but I digress. The deal was made specifically so that 2K had the rights to the MLB as the only third-party company. Any company that produced through a console manufacturer would still have an opportunity to make MLB-branded games. But the thought by 2K was that they'd have more money or reach in the development process and take hold in the baseball gaming market. What they didn't know was that 989 Studios and Red Zone Interactive were merging into San Diego Studios, under Sony Computer Entertainment America's umbrella. The following year, 989 Sports' MLB series would rebrand and retool their franchise for the 2006 release under San Diego Studios. What followed was a complete power shift in the baseball gaming industry. Welcome to the show. On February 28, 2006, MLB 06 The Show was released on PlayStation 2 and the PSP handheld console. Gone were the days of Vince Scully and campy humor, and in stepped a remarkable push by San Diego Studios to capture the realism of the sport of baseball. Local San Diego Padres play-by-play voice announcer Matt Vasgersian was hired to be the main broadcast talent, alongside Rex Hudler and series mainstay Dave Campbell. Yes, it's hard to believe since it's been over 15 years, but Matt Vasgersian has been there from the very beginning. There were all sorts of new features and modes in MLB 06, namely the career mode, which followed your unique ballplayer during his journey from the minor leagues into the big leagues. The game received favorable praise, with an aggregate score of 83 out of 100 on Metacritic. For reference, MLB 2005, the last game by 989 Sports, received a 78. So what made the game so great? Let's take a closer look at what MLB 06 The Show had to offer. As with any sports game, the first mode that users find is the exhibition or quick play mode, which you can either play versus the CPU or head-to-head against a friend. This was very important back in 2006, since split-screen gaming was still a thing. Users could play as any MLB team, the League All-Star squads, or if you played long enough to unlock them, some Silver and Golden era teams. I remember playing exhibition round robins with my neighbors, where we'd draft all 25 players on paper, move the players onto our own teams, and then save the rosters for later. As simple as an exhibition mode sounds, back in the mid-2000s, every mode was what you made of it. Next up is Rivalry, a new feature where you could pick a team and face off against a rival of your choice. The best way I could describe this mode is a playoff series that keeps stats and records. Your rivalry could last 7 games, or different increments anywhere up to 83 games. If you were a huge Yankees fan, you could try and see how many times you could beat the crap out of the Red Sox. Or if you had a friend or sibling, you could each pick a team of your choice and play back and forth to see how many times you could beat the other player, while saving the rivalry file for later. If you craved bragging rights beyond one game and wanted to see the game history, Rivalry was a good extension of exhibition mode. One of the major offerings in MLB 06 was the career mode, where you'd create a player of your choice, pick what position you wanted to play, and then begin the course of your career. You began with a certain amount of attribute points, where you could customize your player to fit the playstyle mold you wanted. Most attributes were maxed at 50 to begin. After your player was created, the game brought you to a team select screen that showed your competition within the organization. You'd begin your career in spring training, and eventually start off the regular season in the minor league system. At any point of your career, you could interact with your team or the media, such as requesting a trade, putting the manager on blast, or retiring into the sunset. Your manager and team both had morale levels, so if you had a higher relationship with the manager, you'd be more likely to ask for playing time and have them agree. The game gave you varying goals, and completing goals, as well as performing well in the stat sheet during gameplay, accumulated training hours. Spending those training hours would improve the attributes of your choice. However, you had no control over your team during career mode. All of the roster decisions and game happenings were simulated, other than the points where your player was specifically involved. To get to those moments, you had to simulate manually rather than the game doing so on its own. After each game, you would get a stat line and feedback on your performance. As your career continued, you could get higher values on your contracts and view your personal stats go up the leaderboard. There were 2 modes where you could control the entire roster over the course of the year: franchise and season. Season was more of the bare bones mode for users who just wanted the basics, such as team roster control, stats, and accolades. You could also adjust the number of games in the year. Rosters were limited to 40 players, your 25 active players, and 15 reserves. Franchise gave you more direct control over everything a GM or owner would usually need to make decisions on. Firstly, the team you selected had a set of goals over the course of your contract. The more goals you completed, the more likely that team would keep you on as their leader. Different franchises had different expectations for winning. Once the franchise began, you had full control over a 90-man roster from your MLB team down to your AA team. You could also focus spending on the team's training, scouting, management team, and the durability of your team via rehab. Additionally, you could spend your team's budget on stadium updates, facilities, and means of transportation. More budget could be acquired by marketing, increasing ticket and vendor prices, TV contracts, stadium promotions, and sponsors. Your net budget for the year could be accessed at the main menu by pressing the circle button. At any point during the franchise, you could see how much you were spending against competing MLB teams, or how favorably the players and fans thought of you. Winning games obviously increased morale, but so did adding certain items the players or fans wanted. Feedback could be found in the Franchise Progress tab. Over the course of the franchise, you could view player development on an annual basis and look at specific player cards to see how their attributes fared against the league average. There was also daily news from around the league, team rankings, and a page to show you who was on a hot streak in case you wanted to pitch around another team's star player in an upcoming matchup. One of the things I found fascinating is that the Hall of Fame and Accolades tabs were more fleshed out than the franchise mode in games today. There were more stats that came into determining the award winners, and the Hall of Fame members actually showed real players instead of players who had just been inducted since the franchise save file began. The Home Run Derby mode has been a staple of any baseball video game since the early 2000s. Nothing like an arcade-style minigame to see who can hit the most dingers. Similarly to Home Run Derby, MLB 06 had a new arcade mode called King of the Diamond. You'd play a 3-inning game against an opponent, either as the Crimson or Cobalt team. Users picked one player and one pitcher to control for the entire game. In each half inning, you had 2 minutes to score as many runs as you could. Hitting the ball onto the field of play would score bonus time depending on where the ball landed or what object it hit. In some cases, hitting a cutout of a fielder would lead to an out. Harder contact led to more base hit opportunities, and multiple hits in a row led to time bonuses. As a pitcher, you had 2 bonuses you could use to try and diminish the opposition's rally. After selecting a bonus, if you successfully threw a strike or got an out, you could either take 10 seconds off the clock or clear the bases. You also had 4 seconds to throw a pitch, otherwise the opposition got a free meatball. Throwing a ball led to an automatic walk. If you wanted to see how many games you could win in a row, there was a 1-player ladder mode to see how far your streak could go. The difficulty got harder the further up the ladder you went. Some of the game basics in King of the Diamond are similar to Challenge of the Week, which I would consider as a building block. As the games got more fine-tuned controls, the rewards became more skill-based for plate discipline and swing placements. If local play wasn't your thing back in 2006, the show featured Sportsconnect Online, where you could play other users across the world head-to-head. There were game rooms, buddy lists, and other items to communicate with other players. Or if you wanted to create your own rosters and players, you could make completely fictional players, or players not in the game, with the Create a Player tool. Using the new player movement feature in the roster screen, you could shape the rosters the way you wanted. Created players could be placed in the free agent pool and then moved to whatever team you wanted, which you could save and use the roster for future use. Earlier I mentioned the broadcast packages, which many of us are more than used to hearing the same lines over the last 15 plus years. But the immersion in this game was insane for its time, including some items that I don't even remember being in the game. MLB 06 The Show claims it had over 35,000 unique broadcast lines, including year-specific looks at player performance, stadium features, and more. One of the coolest things is a cutscene before each game where the outside of the home stadium is pictured before transitioning into the beginning of the broadcast. The other animations in the game are a bit rudimentary considering the time period, but I was also impressed with how lifelike the movements of the umpires are compared to now. That was basically it in a nutshell. MLB 06 The Show came out swinging with a variety of modes, each with amazing depth. In its lifespan, the game sold over an estimated 1.2 million copies. 2K Baseball, meanwhile, after getting their exclusivity contract, was sputtering out of the gate. The PS2 version of MLB 2K6 received a rating of 70, which was the highest score of the 5 consoles it was released on that year. The show series would not fall to below that 83 mark until the 2015 edition of the game, repeatedly improving upon itself year after year. By that time, however, 2K would wave the white flag on its baseball franchise. In its final release in 2013, the game would receive a score of 48 after essentially releasing a roster update of its 2012 game. EA Sports tried to shift its MVP series to NCAA baseball, but ultimately pulled the plug in 2007 after poor sales. There were some reports in August 2021 that they're in developments to return to making baseball games, but there's really nothing concrete. After 2013, MLB The Show was on its own island, and no other developer has tried their hand at a realistic simulation baseball game since. Unless you count RBI Baseball, I suppose. Any attempt to recreate what MLB The Show has going would likely fall flat, and that notion has for the most part deterred any other serious simulation game developments in the baseball sphere. Finally, in 2019, Sony and the MLB Players Association agreed to a deal where the Sony-developed versions of the game could be released on other consoles, and the first Xbox version of the show released in April 2021. There were no more exclusivity deals, there were no more third-party dealings, there was only the show. Thank you for watching this episode of A History of the Show. I hope you enjoyed this retrospective on the first MLB The Show game release. If you guys would like to see more videos like this one, but in a short-form style format, we'll be doing a new series over on the Showzone channel called Show and Tell. Those videos will be exactly like A History of the Show, but for historical events that don't have as much substance or information available. Likely they'll just be a few minutes long. As always, I appreciate you watching, and we'll see you in the next video.